Welcome back to one of the Western Horn Festival's feature events, a guest artist masterclass. Each year, high school students are invited to apply for the Roger Collins Award. The top candidates have the opportunity to perform on this masterclass and receive a $100 scholarship. This year's performers and Roger Collins Award winners are Will Sammons, Luke Suarez, and Elizabeth Willson. They are joined by WIU sophomore Lauren Antoniolli. Lauren was a Roger Collins Award recipient in 2018. I'd like to take a moment to thank the members of the Cobalt Quartet for their excellent teaching and all the applicants who applied for this year's Roger Collins Award. Hello, and welcome to the Roger Collins Award Masterclass. This is Will Sammons. I'm going to let him introduce himself. If you'll say, who you are and what you do and any pertinent information, and then we'll get started playing.
Hi, I'm Will Sammons. I'm a senior at Geneseo High School in Geneseo, Illinois, and I've been playing horn for 7 years.
And what will you be playing today for the masterclass?
I'll be playing Minuetto 1 and Minuetto 2 by J.S. Bach from his first cello suite.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Will. Whenever you're ready.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
really nice. Thank you for playing. I'm looking at your music. It's just very small. I'm sorry. Just want to make sure I'm okay. How long have you been working on this?
Since early January.
Cool. And are you preparing it for something in particular, or just working on it?
I had it prepared for some auditions at colleges, so this is kind of after the fact of me having prepared it.
Well, that's okay. They're great pieces, so
Yeah.
we can always make them better. Is there anything in particular that you have worked on or that you struggle with that you would like help with?
I think one of the main things when I was working on this was to kind of capture the essence of the cello and like play it stylistically, how the cello would play it. So what I've been doing is I've been listening to some recordings and trying to emulate what the recordings are doing when I play it.
Great, absolutely. That's a big challenge of these pieces. And one of the other challenges is, obviously the instrument that was written for, they don't have to breathe, right? They don't use their air to produce sound. So these are really excellent pieces to, I think, work on airflow, continuous airflow. Of course, we're doing this via Zoom, and so there's a little bit of sound quality that's lost in that. I've been reminding my students all week of that. But I do think that there are some ways we could get your air moving a little bit more in between notes. There are a lot of large upward leaps in this piece. Actually, there are a lot of descending intervals as well. But the slurred ones are mainly upwards. And every so often we get a little bit of a hitch. And I think when you think about the cello, if you think about your airstream like the bow of the cello, it's a continuous motion, right? So you're totally on the right track with your listening and your thinking. I'm curious how much of this you have ever played on just your mouthpiece alone, just buzzing.
When I listen, I usually buzz along with it just so I can emulate what the recording is trying to do. So often.
Good. That's great. Could we do that actually through the first trill? Is that 4 bars?
Okay.
Do you find your first note and just buzz through that for me? Good. And so, of course, we have less resistance in the mouthpiece, so we're going to need to breathe more often. I'm going to buzz. First, I want to try one thing. I want you to take your mouthpiece and flip it backwards.
Okay.
Okay. And you're probably going to have to breathe a lot more doing this because we're going to lose all resistance. But I want you to do this. Blow through the whole thing like a wind pattern.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Try to do it with a really relaxed stream of air, or really open. You're gonna need to breathe, you know, every 3 or 4 notes probably. Really loose. Okay. Good. Now flip your mouthpiece over.
Okay.
And let's buzz. Your first note. Sorry. You're gonna... Thank you. You ready? Let's buzz together. Get as the highest quality buzz you can all the way through.
Okay.
So when you feel like I need to take a breath, just take a breath.
Sure.
It's different than when you play your horn. Okay? Ready? Okay. Can you do that in your horn now and see if you feel like your air is moving more steadily?
Okay. Feels better.
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell via Zoom, but I felt like what was happening was you're kind of getting a deterioration of sound at the end of the phrase. Maybe because you're sort of not moving as much air, or you're running out of air. So the thing is, with a piece like this, when you think about the cello's ability to phrase, they can phrase and support long term, whereas you have to break it up into smaller pieces to breathe. We can't get our phrases so long that we can't support the highest quality tone.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so when you, let's see, I think maybe Caroline, if I go like 3 more minutes. Okay. So the only other thing that I'd talk about in this first minuet is the low register and getting that sound stabilized.
Okay.
Okay. So if we could go pick up after your trill and play to the repeat. And of course, I'm listening for the last bar before the repeat.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so you did something interesting that time when we isolated it. Mm-hmm. Did you feel like you played a little differently?
I felt like I took almost more time and made it legato on those last 3 notes.
Yeah. So every time that happens, you know, if we think about the horn and the way it works and the way our air works, when we're playing low, we're using a really thick kind of diffuse airstream. Like, you know, those straws that are made for like milkshakes that are bubble teas, they're like huge straws. Mm-hmm. Or a paper towel roll, right? We're blowing through that and it's like, it's a very diffuse, very slow moving airstream. It's like, I talk to my students a lot about making it like a fog that's going through your horn because you have to fill the space up. But when you're playing high, and this piece covers both the high and the low register, it's like blowing a stream of air through those little tiny coffee stir straws. It's like a really, really defined laser type air. And I think a lot of times we forget that our airstream has to change. Mm-hmm. And so when when you attack the high register, the sound's very immediate. It's very crisp. It's right there. When we play in the low register, it's a little bit woollier, for like lack of a better term. It's like a richer, fuller, darker sound. And so I want you to think about using low register air down there. And that also includes making those notes longer in this style of playing so that we hear the tone and so it develops. If we use high horn air, it's too fast. It's like the low tones are gonna be a little bit wobbly.
Okay.
But I didn't hear that at all when you slowed down.
Okay.
So you wanna kind of think about, how am I gonna make this sound stable, like I'm placing it on a shelf, kind of. So I think just attention to those things. That usually that low stuff is happening at the end of a phrase or at the end of your air. You want not the same kind of support that you would up high, but a really supported, even steady airstream.
Okay.
But it sounds really great.
Yeah.
Keep working on it. I'm going to mute and let Dr. Steiger work with you.
All right. Thank
you. Thank you very much.
Will, you want to move on to the second minuet?
Sure.
Okay. Very nice, very nice. So this is my favorite one. I always love the minor ones because I feel like they're more expressive, and I especially love the minor ones that don't end. Bach did this a lot on a Picardy third, and we don't have that problem because we can't do the third. So anyway, there are a couple of things just to kind of piggyback off of what Katie mentioned. I do feel like as you're going from the mid range or the high range back into the low range, that your air is just not wide and slow enough. And I also feel like your articulations are getting in the way of your airstream. So when you have nice, long, continuous slurs, in general, your sound is much better and much smoother. And then when you tie an articulation in, like you see the forte towards the end, it's like, 10 bars from the end or something like that. Those articulations were fairly heavy. And it's like dia 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 da 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 da. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have the same continuous air that's going past that tongue. We move back to the mouthpiece for a second. So find your first, we're going to start on the third space C, the bar before that forte. So just go ahead and find that note. Do you see where I am?
No.
So from the very end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 before the end. We might be working from a different edition.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where in that bar?
Just starting from the beginning of that bar, I'm going to have you buzz on the mouthpiece, but find your first note. Okay, so the bar before that, sorry.
Oh, okay, I see.
Okay, so just those two measures. Sorry, just those two measures. So dia dia da e da 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 dee da. We want to make sure that the sound stays the same, but your air is going to have to change, going from the third space C down to that B flat. I also like to think of the direction of the air, not just the speed of the air. So as you go from the third space C, where your air might be pointed more down, generally by the time you get to that B flat, your air is going more forward. So think about that too.
Okay.
One more time.
Again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't quite get low enough for that B flat. Can you play the B flat on your horn? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to buzz that note. Especially, it's hard to buzz that note, but da 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 dee da. Can you buzz that arpeggio? Okay, if you can, take your other hand, hold it fairly close to the shank of the mouthpiece, and I want you to play that same arpeggio, da, 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 and make sure that you're feeling the air consistently through all of that, through all of those notes.
Okay.
Do you feel the breaks in between the notes?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So we want to minimize that as much as possible. That's your tongue getting in the way. Dot, 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 dot. Like it's literally staying, it's staying at your teeth and stopping the air. And your tongue is just like, if you've ever done this with a hose and you kind of stop the stream of water and you feel like all of that pressure, that's what we don't want, all right? The tongue doesn't start and stop the note. It just interrupts the air very briefly, okay? So one more time on the mouthpiece. Feel the air coming out of the shank, da, 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 and try and feel that more continuous and with less space in between the notes.
Okay.
One more time. Good. Now, can you go to the horn? And let's back up to 2 bars before where we started on the mouthpiece. So now we're 12 before the end. How did that feel?
That felt a lot better.
Yeah. It's amazing what the tongue does.
Yes.
And how much it gets in the way of our sound and our air. I don't know if. Oh yeah, we have some time still. Okay, great. So this one, I know you've been working on it for a while. Could we speed it up just a little bit? So this one is supposed to move more, and I really love to feel like this is in one. Dee ah dee da dee da dee dum pum dee ah dee da dee da dee ah dee da da da. So with that, we want to make sure that we're emphasizing slightly beat 1. Right? A minuet is a dance, and beat 1 would have been the heaviest beat, and then beat 2 would have been like tiptoe beats. So pum 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 dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee. And along with that, Bach a lot of times writes those lower notes on stronger beats. So with the cello, you would have had more rich sound. You would have had a nice full rich sound on those strong beats, and then kind of lightening up on beats 2 and 3. Can you try that from the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that's it. We'll just do that much.
Okay.
So it's like beat 1 is strong, beat 2 is light, beat 3 leads into beat 1. So we always have this forward momentum into the next measure. Okay. Can you just sing that for me?
Dee da dee da dee da da dum bum da da dum bum 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 da 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 dum bum bum.
Pause. I know the range is difficult. We won't worry about that. But let's go with a circular motion with one of your hands. Can you go dee da dee da dee da tum pum pum pa, and really flow through that, so you feel like you've got momentum into that.
Okay.
Down. Okay. So 1, 2, 3.
Dee ah dee da dum dum bum ba da 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 dum dum bum da 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 da.
Yeah, that had a lot more phrasing to it than how you sang before and how you played before as well.
Okay.
I want you to sing it that way one more time with that motion, and then you can play it.
Okay. Dee ha dee da dum dum bum ba da 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 dum bum bum da 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 da.
Okay, now play it.
Okay.
How do you think that went?
There were some that I would like to have emphasized more, but I thought that worked a lot better than how it was before.
Yeah, I agree. I think that had a lot more movement to it, and when you can get more motion into these Bach cello suites, then you start to realize that these are dance. These are dance movements. People may not be dancing to them. They're like an expressive, it's an expressive interpretation of that dance theme, but we still want to tie it back to that dance type as much as possible and have that motion in what we're playing. I feel like we probably need to wrap up.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, we are about ready to wrap up. I wanted to say, I've been thinking about this a lot with, I teach aural skills, Will, and in aural skills, we practice a lot of different rhythm studies. And I've been thinking about it a lot with my students about thinking about like meters that are in 3, like this one, 3/4 or 9/8 or something, that they have this circular feel. So I think it makes sense what you're talking about, Caroline, about like gesturing that feeling of a loop, and at the bottom of the loop there's more weight, versus a square pattern like 4 or something. So interesting, food for thought. Will, I hope you got some good ideas, things to practice. This is a great unaccompanied piece to be playing right now.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for participating. Great job.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so this will get broadcast next weekend as part of the Horn Festival online stuff. But if you want to see the video ahead of time from that, let me know. I can share it with you. So,
all right. Okay,
thanks so much, Will. We'll say goodbye to you.
Thanks, Will.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye-bye. Everyone, welcome to the Roger Collins Award-winning Masterclass performers. This is Beth Willson. Hello, Beth.
Hello.
Beth is a high school senior, and I'll let her introduce herself. We have with us Caroline Steiger from Texas State University, let me say it right, in San Marcos, and Rose Valby, who is, say what your Air Force Band
United States Air Force Band of the West.
Excellent. Okay, so Beth, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Beth Willson, and I'm a high school senior at Lincoln Way Central High School. I'm in a lot of, band stuff at school, the symphony, jazz band, pretty much every extracurricular music thing. And I'm going to be playing Laudatio by Bernhard Krol, so.
Okay, great. So I'm going to mute myself here and let everybody else run the show. So Caroline, if you want to stop her at any point, feel free to do that. Okay.
Yeah, Beth, I'll just make a hand signal.
Okay.
If I want you to stop, but for now, let's just play.
All right.
Great, really wonderful. So unaccompanied pieces are so incredibly challenging. And as a high school student tackling a piece like Laudatio, I think that's incredible. It's it's so much more critical in an unaccompanied piece that you have strong musical ideas, and I think you have some really great musical ideas that you're presenting. But the difficulty is there's no one else to carry the melodic content. It's all on you, right? And so I think it's really brave of you to tackle a piece like this. And I think that you're doing some really, really nice things. I think you have a good grasp of some of the motivic ideas, the dio, that kind of half step that runs throughout. I think you've got some really great understanding of the piece. So there are a couple of things that I want to talk to you about. And one of them is creating space and letting space and silence be a part of those musical ideas. And so it's really hard to understand that when you're practicing in a smaller room. Whenever you get into a big hall and you can let the sound ring, you'll get it. But for now, you just kind of have to imagine that you're in that big space and you're letting your sound just go until it stops. So right from the very beginning, da, 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 dee. Wait. Da, da, so just allowing those moments to breathe. You've also got, in the music, there are fermatas, right? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There are fermatas over rests. There are the caesuras. They're like breath marks. So there are different, he writes in different lengths of rest time. And so when I was working on this piece, I just kind of had to give myself like a fermata like 6 seconds or something like that, you know, like an actual time where I kind of counted and just kind of had to think about that.
Oh, great. We have the music. I believe that was just sent to us.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
We can have specifics. Good. Mine's back at my house and I'm stuck here. So this is perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So when you see that fermata over the bar line, that means that you're going to wait, you know, a good amount of time, basically until the sound clears, and until the sound clears in a big resonant space, not necessarily in the tiny room that you're in. And that's going to help build the drama, right? You've got dee da da dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da da dee da dee da da dee, and then a breath mark, so you can rest a little bit longer, not maybe as long as the fermata on the bar line. Let's just do the first maybe 3 or 4 lines with that aspect in mind.
Okay.
So giving those rests more weight. Yeah. Sorry. That's my hand signal. Do you need to take a breath after that first fermata?
No.
Try it without a breath.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, I think that's the right idea. And I'm sorry to stop you before you really got going into the next section. That's one of my favorite sections. So the one last thing, I think that you could be moving forward more into the phrases, like in the maestoso section, dee da dee ah dee da da dee da da dee da dee ah da da. You know, it's okay to use a little bit of rubato, especially in a freer piece like this. You don't have to be so strictly in time. There are unaccompanied pieces where I feel like we have to hold the line a little bit more, but this one is so free. And I really think that you need to run with that idea more. So using this idea of taking time and giving time. If you speed up a section, you're going to slow down another section to balance it all out. And that way it doesn't seem like you have bad rhythm. And if like you're speeding up, then the subdivision speeds up. Does that make sense? So if you're kind of rushing through 16th notes, then that's at the whole level. We're gonna switch over to Rose, and I'll just sit and watch and listen. But it was really great to work with you, Beth. You sound fantastic.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Caroline, feel free to still continue to jump in if you'd like. Really, really nice playing. You've got great bone structure, I'll say. And, so a couple of ideas that I'd like to play around with is the idea of gesture. And so, you know, we were talking about speeding up in certain places and taking rubato. I think all these motives, and we can really exaggerate them, and they need a character to it. So, I mean, when you're playing this piece, what kind of mood or what kind of character are you thinking about?
I mean, when I play it, I feel like I picture like a romance movie in my head, and it's like the scene in the rain where they're splitting up from each other.
Ooh.
And it's very longing.
I love that. That's great. So I think it's important to have some type of idea, story, something like that in mind to sort of frame everything. So even just with the first two notes, this little half step motive that we have, to me, it feels like a big sigh. This big dramatic moment. So even when you're starting the piece, feel free to just give yourself that time to be still for a moment before you start. Because I think that first note is just going to have more weight to it, more, not necessarily like decibel weight, but just emotional weight to it, more of that sighing thing. So I think throughout this whole piece, really emphasizing the gestures of things is really important. Let's see. I'd like to pick a couple of spots to do that. I mean, let's go with just the first two lines, just because that's a really clear spot to do that with. And think about your story. What is happening, or what could be happening in your story when we get to the maestoso in the second line? Which one of your characters is saying something, and what are they saying?
I feel like that's more of the female character, and that's kind of the way it starts with the B flat, the low B flat, and then the D flat. I feel like that's kind of like an angry sounding part to me, and that's just her frustration with the situation, whatever.
Yeah. Well, make us hear that. So as an audience member, we need to be spoon-fed the story. So make all of your gestures really clear and dramatic, and that goes along with that space that Caroline was talking about. Let's just do the first two lines and make it extra dramatic. Oh, I'm going to pause you for a second. Remember, we took out that breath there? Yeah. You for a moment here. So there was an earlier time that you played this particular line, just that last little section that you played, where your sound was really, really compact. You know, like the famous Star Wars Princess Leia theme, how it just kind of floats.
Yeah.
That's the kind of sound that I imagine here. And at one point, when you went from the F to the B flat at that fermata that you just ended, you had this really, really beautiful streamlined, compact sound. And I wonder if you can get that from the start of that phrase. Just really kind of delicate, focused, compact sound. Can we do that starting in the tranquillo, simply, that section there?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's start that again. Make your first note, make it a good foundation to push forward to the C. Cool. Now let's add some of that gestural idea in there. So maybe it's not perfectly in time. Let's see. Try it again where you play with the time. You push it a little bit.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I love the sound that you got on that last bottom. I thought that was so beautiful and delicate. So just think about that in those sections. I just thought it was really pretty. Let's go to a different section. Let's go to kind of the second section. Let's do a little bit of that. And yeah, let's start there. Cool. Let's start that again. No, that's okay. So let's work with just that much right there. So we have ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum. So kind of the same idea 2 times in a row. Do we want to do them both the same? Do we want to change the second one? What do you think?
My idea is that it's getting louder.
Okay, great. I didn't know that's what you were trying to do, so make that really obvious.
Okay.
And again, just give yourself a moment of stillness before you start. So once you're in something, your accuracy gets better. Sometimes starting, your brain isn't in the game yet, so get yourself there right away. Just be really still mentally and in your body before you start. Great, so I thought the beginning of that was so much more convincing, and it was more accurate, which of course needs to be a thing as well. I think their 8th notes, let's see, those sound they sound a little bit heavy to me in terms of their character, like the 8th or that rhythm there sounds slower than the tempo that you're setting up in the 16th or whatever the rhythm is. Again, I don't have that part right in front of me, but so just make sure that you're still keeping that rhythmically accurate to what you've set up before. And this is different than the rubato thing, because I think at this point we're kind of cranking along pretty straight ahead. So yeah, let's do that little section again and just keep that in mind. Try not to have the after the 16th be too heavy in terms of your articulation.
Okay.
Cool, let's do that little chunk again. Go for it. So to me, it sounded like it actually sped up quite a bit instead of saying one tempo there.
Okay.
So that might just be a spot. So even within a piece that has some wiggle room, we want to make sure that we're still being rhythmically accurate and consistent in a section that we're choosing to say, hey, I want this to be one tempo or something like that. So cool.
Sorry,
Oh,
Rose.
Caroline, feel free to jump in, please.
That's where I'm gonna jump in. When I tell my students rubato doesn't mean bad rhythm, you know, we still need to be able to know what the rhythm is, even if you're stretching it. So when suddenly you're at a much slower tempo without building us, it's like what Rose was saying, you have to spoon feed us everything because we don't have the music. Even if we know the piece, we still don't have the music in front of us. So you really have to guide us to your direction. Sorry, I'll
No, please, that's fine. Let's see. Let's go a little bit to maybe the ending of this piece, and let's work on just the very end of it, making it sound really, really final. Let's maybe pick one tiny little spot. If you want to just pick like a last line or something like that.
Okay.
Cool. So to me, all those little gestures sound about the same volume. So again, just make it really obvious if you want all the bottoms to be the same or change in there. I think we have to start wrapping up here, but it's been really, really fantastic working with you. This is a fantastic piece to work on because it's a complete work with just yourself right now. So it sounds really fantastic. Keep making those things really, really obvious, all those gestures. So.
Thank you all so much. Beth, beautiful playing. I heard some real improvement. I hope you have some ideas to take with you for your practicing, and such a great piece. Good choice for today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Roger Collins Award winner Masterclass. This is Luke Suarez and Katie Johnson-Webb, and I will let Luke go ahead and introduce himself. Go ahead, Luke.
Hi, I'm Luke Suarez. I'll be playing the last two movements of Mozart's Third Horn Concerto.
Okay, go ahead, Luke, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Good, Luke. Thank you so much for playing. Can you tell me a little bit about how long you've been working on this piece and if you're preparing it for something in particular?
I played it, let's see, in 7th grade for a just one-piece recital, and then recently started playing it for, I don't really know, maybe 4 months.
You have a history with the piece. It's not brand new.
No, yeah. It's,
good. And do you have a favorite recording?
No, I don't really have one. There's like, oh, you should always love the Dennis Brain recording, but I like Tuckwell's recordings. I like Bauman's recordings.
Those are all great ones. Yeah, good. Okay, so you sound like you've definitely heard a lot of different takes on the Mozart concertos. Everybody kind of has their own style. I want to help you with a few things that will help the character the way you're playing it.
Okay.
The first thing is that whenever I am working on Mozart, is probably the piece that I teach the most in the college horn studio, but I mean any concerto, anything that has been written, any orchestral excerpt, anything that's been written to be played with an orchestra, I will oftentimes ask myself and my students, do you hear your orchestra? So I have a sense that you're maybe not hearing your string section really strongly. And so that's something that when you do listen, I think when we listen to recordings, we can kind of focus on the horn player, because that's the part that we're most interested in learning about. But really, we're listening to the recordings to get a sense of what is this whole piece about, right? So I would encourage you to listen back to your recordings, try to tune the horn out.
Okay.
Just listen to the orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling, there's a sense when you're playing, and of course I'm new to you and this is kind of a strange situation on the computer and all of that, but there's a little bit of a rushed quality. And in Mozart, there's always a sense of an eighth note pulse. The violins, the strings, they're always playing that for you. And so if we don't have that internal subdivision of an orchestra literally right behind you playing, we have to create it ourselves. And you're gonna hear that in your inner hearing by really getting used to listening to those recordings and using a metronome in a way that you're not relying on it for the time, but it's helping you always produce time. Okay, so what we don't want is that at the end of a phrase or through a rest, we rush through because you push your, I always say to my students, like, you just rushed your orchestra, they can't follow you, so pretend that they're there and hear them. The other thing, two other things that I want to comment on, and one of those is the tapering of the last note of a phrase. You're doing a little bit of a clipping, and maybe it's not always the last note of a phrase, but here's an exercise that I think would be really great for you to work on. Really simple exercise. It's just listening to the ends of the notes. We focus a lot on the beginning articulations, but we don't always pay attention to how the love and care that we're giving to the ends of notes and phrases. And they're just as important as the articulation. So this is a really simple one. I hope the sound is okay. I haven't balanced my microphone. It's just quarter notes. You can do this on any note. You could practice your scales this way. I tell my students always try to really be efficient with the way that you're practice your scales and practice your articulation exercises together. Right, so you could just work your way up chromatically. You could work your way up by, in scales. You could play all the notes of this concerto, 3 times. But what I'm really focusing on is that I have a beautiful, soft serve ice cream. It has like the taper at the top. Put it on its side. Everything ends with a beautiful triangle. Okay, I think a little more care in the taper of notes will help with what I'm going to talk about next, which is the title of this movement is what?
Romanza?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Romance?
Yeah, it's something sweet and happy.
Okay.
It's not, doesn't imply that the actual larghetto, the actual tempo marking is not rushed. It's something simple, and the word that we would see in music is dolce, sweet, right? And so not rushing, hearing your orchestra, letting the music kind of breathe that way, tapering the ends of phrases, watching slurring and articulation patterns. Not enough time today to go through that, but that's something to think about. One am I tonguing, one am I slurring? It's not always clear in Mozart based on what he wrote. Slur to, tongue to would be the pattern that Mozart most frequently used, or people who played it used. And dynamics, which I don't think are probably very prevalent in this movement, but then making decisions on your own. I don't know what edition you're looking at, but making your decisions on your own about, does this section, should it be softer? Should I be leading somewhere? All those things work together. They're technical answers to a musical problem, which is, am I conveying the concept of this piece to my audience? So right now, it's a little bit rough. Okay. It's like a little bit too direct. And I would love to hear you sweeten it up. And those are just ways of doing that. That little articulation exercise, could you just do that, just like the last thing? Could you practice that yourself? And could I hear you kind of practice the taper?
Okay, starting on R middle C.
You could pick any note.
Okay.
Good. So you're never releasing the note with your tongue. You're just letting the air kind of peter out. And in time, that taper will become shorter. It's a little bit long right now, but the more you practice that, the faster you'll be able to do that. So every note just naturally ends that way. Unless you're doing something where you actually want that clipped sound, but that doesn't happen very often in music. So I think I should probably pass it over to Dr. Gardner. Thank you so much for playing. It sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, great job, Luke. I want to just echo what Dr. Johnson-Webb was saying about hearing the pulse of the orchestra. Like in the beginning of this movement, just that opening line when you're thinking, da, da, dum, bum, be, da, 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 dum, bum, 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 beam, bum, be, da, right? The cellos and the strings are all filling in all these eighth notes. So you really want to hear that throughout as part of your the whole work, right? Yes, it's a solo piece, but it's a solo piece with orchestra. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's go on to the allegro. I was going to say rondo because isn't this usually marked rondo? It says allegro in the part I'm looking at. And let's just get through. I'll stop you. You go ahead and get started. We won't play all of it right now.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry, I was muted there. I said very nice. That was great playing. I really like the clarity that's coming through on your articulation, even through the internet. Okay. Thinking about this movement, I think we have to talk about a similar concept to what we did in the second movement, which is just the concept of time. In the slow movement, the romanza, you probably have a little bit more liberty with time where you could stretch some things and move some things ahead, and there'd be opportunity for the conductor and the orchestra to follow you. This movement, It really clicks in pretty much most of the time. There are a couple places we can play with, but it should feel really steady. Is there like a picture that you have in your head when you play this piece, or a story that you think of?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Well, that might be something to think about to start with. So for me, whenever I get to third movements of Mozart, I'm always thinking about like the guy on the horse with his horn galloping along, right? And a gallop is going to be a really sort of steady, fast tempo. We don't think about it as being like sort of faster and slower, right? So at the beginning, it's really important that your quarter notes have 2 eighth note worth of rhythm within them. So can you play that opening phrase? I want you to go slowly, and I want you to play da 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 dum. So I'm articulating 2 eighth notes on the quarter, and keep going da 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 dum, and all the way through the end of this first phrase where you subdivide every eighth note in the bar.
Okay, so play it as if I were play the eighth notes on the quarter notes, even though they're not.
Yes. Okay. Play all the eighth notes and fill up the time. Okay, go ahead. A little under tempo. Yes. Okay. So you need to do that so many times that that's what you hear in your head when you're playing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I want to add another layer to that. Right now, the ends of each note, the beginning has the great clarity, and I really like that, but the end is almost too chopped off. There's too much daylight between every note. There's no staccatos written here, so we want clarity, but not that secco dryness. So again, under tempo, da 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 da, not da 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 da. Do you hear the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and play it with that little bit more length and air through the time of each eighth note.
Okay.
Good. I like that a lot better. Obviously, when it goes faster, then the notes themselves won't be as long, but in terms of the relationship between them, that's nice. Now, let me ask you, that first measure and the third measure, where we have one note repeated many times, where do you think, what do you think is happening in that measure? Is it sort of just sitting there? Is it going somewhere? Is it coming back?
I think it's going to the quarter note that follows it.
I agree. So I'd really like to hear that in your phrasing. And one tool that we can use for that would be dynamics. Mm-hmm. If you can add just a little crescendo, da, 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 and then that's where you have that beautiful release that you were working on the last movement. And then repeat that. Da, 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 da. Now this is something different. Da, 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 da. So that sort of copy paste, build the intensity, and then that third little section really let the music flow through that. Okay, can you try the whole thing? Now, let's still subdivide the eighth notes this one last time, but now thinking about the dynamics and still slightly under tempo.
Okay.
Yeah, and that last phrase should really arrive on that appoggiatura on, I think it's measure 8. Da, 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 ti, okay, and it resolves nicely. So now let's put it back into performance context. With that subdivision in mind, so it's nice and steady in tempo, with those little crescendos to give you phrasing and sort of a terrace feel with 2 measures, 2 measures, 4 measures, and in tempo, in performance tempo.
Okay.
All that layers. Yes, okay. So that had a lot more character to it. How did it feel for you to play it?
Yeah, it was more interesting.
Okay, so sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I play pieces a lot and I sometimes lose track of what makes this moment exciting or that moment exciting. And I think it's really important to always have those goals in our minds when we're playing. So it's not just about notes and rhythms. It's beyond that. It's what is the story of this music and why am I playing it? You know? So is there a reason that you like this piece or you chose this piece for today?
No, it's just something that I had been working on with my teacher, and it was pretty much the most performance-ready piece that I have right now. So
Sure.
it was kind of,
okay.
That was why I chose it.
So let me ask you, this is a challenging question for professionals to answer too, is why should anyone play Mozart? You know, when we've got all these wonderful recordings, when, you know, it's an old piece of music, it's not a modern thing. Why should we play it, do you think?
I'm thinking that it might be because we're inspired by Mozart and his music, and we want to continue on the tradition that he has laid down for us by revisiting his music and never trying to forget it. Not that we would really forget it in this day and age with all the recordings that we have, but it's nice to have your own take on what Mozart's music is and not just be silent on that kind of.
Yes, that last piece really speaks to me, is that we all have a story to tell, and it's our own story of Mozart. And it's an interesting combination we have to achieve of honoring the historical understanding of the classical time period and the natural horn that this piece was originally written for, which can be a great thing for you to experiment with, just playing everything on first valve and using your hand for the stop notes. And okay, but why is it relevant to my audience today? You know, what do I have to say about this piece on the valve horn, you know, today on March, whatever it is, at noon? You know, what is interesting about it and what do I have to say? And then we bring that to every performance. So it's never the same, okay? Mm-hmm. So keep thinking about that stuff. And I hope that you've got a few tools in your toolbox from the stuff Dr. Johnson-Webb and I have talked to you about, that you could work on the rest of the piece with those things in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your participation today. Congratulations on winning the Roger Collins Award this year. We hope to hear more playing from you in the future.
Okay. Thank you for having me play for you and for giving me some advice on this music. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great job, Luke.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is the Masterclass portion of the Western Horn Festival. We are joined by Lauren Antoniolli, Caroline Steiger, and Katie Johnson-Webb. Lauren, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us what you're playing, and I'm going to disappear and you can get started. Let's have Caroline, why don't you coach the first 10 minutes and Katie the next 10. Okay.
Sounds good.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Antoniolli. I'm a sophomore performance major here, and I'm going to be playing Morceau de Concert by Saint-Saëns.
Great. Lauren, why don't you, could you start from the beginning and just go through measure 45?
Sure.
Okay.
Real quick, can you make sure you've got the turn on original sound hit on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And go ahead, Caroline.
All right. Lauren, really, really nice job so far. How long have you been working on this piece?
I worked on this piece last year for about a semester, and I started revisiting it about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, great. So you have a really good familiarity of it already. Yeah. What's your favorite recording of it?
That's a good question. I have like the link to it, but I don't remember who plays it because it's like an audio recording. So.
So yeah, I feel like it's good to know who you like. There are Jenna just said it's Freudis. That's always a good one. There are a lot of different interpretations of things, like even just down to the articulations, what the accent under the slur means, and all of that. So I think it's really important to know who you like and why you like it, and why that's kind of your guide. I listened to a masterclass. It was a trombone masterclass, but whatever. Recently, and the Barry Hearn is the principal trombone with the Dallas Symphony, so I guess he knows what he's talking about. But he said you need a reference recording for everything that you do, and it needs to be something that you play all the time for yourself. So you're filling your ear, you're filling your musical interpretation with this reference recording, with this gold standard, essentially. And so Freudis is a great gold standard for you, and for everyone. But I think whenever I was like, especially taking auditions, or I'll tell my students this: you need to play your reference recording at least as much as you're playing it for yourself, at least as much as you're playing your horn, because the more you have that in mind, it's going to really help you. It's going to help guide your musical ideas. It's going to help guide your style ideas. So just make sure that, that's on every day. And even if you're just listening to a portion of it, you want to make sure that that's on every day, at least once. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of work with the mouthpiece. Okay. So if you could let's start from the measure bar rehearsal 1. Could you play that B flat on your horn first, just to give yourself a reference?
Wait, starting from the beginning, you want me to start?
So measure 25.
Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so let's start there, and we're gonna go bum ba da dun da da dee da 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 dun da da dee dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da da, and stop at bar 31. Good. Let's find that B flat again and start on measure 29 and see if we can get the sound to be really continuous all the way down to the low B flat.
Okay.
Yeah, I always think the hardest part about this entire piece is how you switch so often back into the low register from the mid-range, and that it seems so easy at first, but then these moments creep up on you, and it's actually really, really challenging. And I thought you did a great job that time of making sure every single pitch had a nice chord to it. So try it one more time. If you need to find that B flat, that's fine. Okay, can you play that much on your horn now? time I didn't think that the B flat centered as much as the notes around it. So just try one more time. Make sure you're really blowing down to that low B flat. Yeah, that was much, much better. Okay. Let's start at square one, big square one. And let's see, I know it's hard for me to tell on Zoom with dynamics, but let's see if you can really, you know, on your end, overdo the mezzo forte and then the piano at bar 29. Just to get those characters really, really different and bold.
Okay.
Yeah, how did you feel that went on your end?
Pretty well. I thought I could have done a little bit more with the mezzo forte to bring out the contrast on the piano a little bit more.
Okay, do it. Okay, good. Yeah, I think all of that is so much better, and I love how smooth you made that slur. I think we should probably, I'm just going to do one more thing before I switch to Katie. Let's go from the very beginning. Let's do it on your mouthpiece, and just for da 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 da, making sure that the air really blows through all of those notes. So do you need to find the G first? You think you have it? Sorry, I don't know. I'm perfect pitch, so. Good. So on the 16th note, sorry to stop you. On the 16th notes, I need as much tone and resonance that you have on the dotted eights. Da 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 da. Make sure those are nice, big, and fat.
Okay.
Can you slur it all the way through? Yeah, one more time, slurring all the way through. Get a nice line through all of that. Okay, and make sure your 30-second notes aren't slow. Okay, now let's try it on the horn, slurred first, and then we'll do the printed articulations. Okay, that was a really good smooth line. Make sure that the subdivision is going through your head very, very strongly. Even if it's slurred. Slur it one more time. Okay, now let's do the printed articulations, but I want you to keep the air and the line the same. Yeah, how do you feel like that went?
Overall, I feel like it's a lot better. I feel like I'm using like more air overall, but also like using more continuous air through the notes, which I think is helping a lot. If I do it again, I'll think a little bit more about that C and just kind of getting like a more full sound on that note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see the short note and we don't give it as much attention and love as the long notes, and so we just have to keep that in mind. I'm sure that you've done this playing the subdivisions, and if you haven't, then that would be a good next step. So you really feel how the subdivision continues. Also, it seems like your fingers are just a little behind your tongue on the 30-second notes, but that could just be a delay on my end. But it just seems like da 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 isn't strictly in time, so that could be something to work on as well. But I loved when you played it that last time how continuous you made that line, and I think when you listen to Freudis's recording, that's what you're going to hear, is that sustain and that line and that beautiful phrasing that she has. It's just like an inherent quality that she has. So make sure you're listening for that as well. We'll switch to Katie now, and I just want to say thank you for playing. You sound really great. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Hi, Lauren.
Hey.
Thanks for playing for us. Sounds really good. I think we'll actually stick with this. We may go on a little bit after the bar 45 in a moment, but I'm curious, that recording of Freudis's, what do you like about that one? Why is that the one you keep going back to?
When I do listening, I listen a lot to like the articulation style. I think like the biggest like differences that I hear between different recordings is just how they approach the articulation, and there's a balance, because I feel like some recordings are like a little bit heavier than I would like it to be, and some recordings are just a little bit like lighter than I would like it to be. So like the number one thing that I listen for is always just like is that kind of an articulation I see myself wanting to match.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, that's interesting, because that's what I was hoping you would say. I think the thing that this piece in particular, a lot of pieces, but one of the reasons why this piece is so fun and played so often is that it's easy to tell a story with a piece of music like this, because it's so filled with characters, right? It's a theme in variations. Every variation comes back and it's a different character. And right now, I'm not hearing as much differentiation in your characters as I think you could do, and that's, excuse me, something that I think most professional recordings are going to really, really differentiate character, and I think that's kind of the next level. And one of the, it's easy to talk about storytelling and, building characters, but sometimes it's hard to identify exactly what you need to do to make that happen technically on the horn. And one of the greatest, probably the two greatest areas of music making that help us differentiate characters are dynamics and phrasing, that's one, and articulations. And I don't hear a lot of variation in your articulations.
Okay.
So, if we look at this section that we just played, what kinds of articulations do you see on your music?
There's marcatos, there's some accents, there's slurs, and there's staccatos.
Yeah. Are there any slurs? Kind of small. Are there any dots and slurs? No, I don't think so. Okay. And then you have normal notes that are not marked, right? That's a lot of variation in articulation.
Accents in slurs, which is something you don't see like all the time.
Yeah. That's kind of similar to a string mark. It's sort of similar to a string marking called portato, which is like a continuous bow with a break in the middle. That would be a dot and a line. This is some variation on that for a brass player, maybe like a heavier emphasis at the beginning of each note. So there's such a tremendous amount of character that you can build into just these first 45 bars that we've played by just making an effort to make every articulation sound different. It's like you have levels of articulation. Some of this isn't something that can be fixed in like a 10-minute talk. It's just for your practice going forward. I think something that you really, really need to aim to do is when you listen to a recording that you love, pick up on why you like that recording. So yeah, Freudis is like the best. She is a heavy articulator though. She really, really tells stories with her music. I would not consider her to be a light player. Her style is very strong, and that might be why it's such an interesting recording to you, because her articulations are so varied. She really, really sells it, and there's no reason that you can't do that. So, could we, I want to hear a little bit of the next character, which is Big Rehearsal 2, if we have time. I think we've got a few minutes here. Could you play for me a 2, and let's kind of talk a little bit about character building before you play it.
Okay.
Have you thought about a story for this piece? Or some kind of set of characters?
Since like it's got some different movements, so I remember when I like really studied this last year, I thought a lot about like how I was gonna differentiate like between the movements. But I don't remember exactly coming up with like a story that I think about when I play it, if that makes sense.
So that's a practice that I have gotten my students into doing more and more, which is to sit down with a piece of music at a desk without your horn and sit down with a piece of paper and literally write out a story. Because music is storytelling, no matter what the piece is. Even a piece like this that lends itself very easily to a story, or a piece that's more abstract and maybe we have a harder time connecting to it in some way. If you're going to play a piece of music convincingly, I think you have to be convinced about what you want to say. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a great, like, an entire practice rehearsal time for you would just be writing your story, so you've tied yourself to something. But if, you know this piece really well, you've played it a lot, what kind of character would you hear it to? What kind of character do you think you might lean towards?
When I think of like this next section, I think of like kind of a really like calm connectedness. Like, I don't know, kind of like almost like trees like flowing in the wind or something like that could kind of connect to it.
Okay. Could we hear that? Could you play from 2 through the Big Rehearsal 2, bar 57 to bar 72?
Okay.
How successful do you think that was in terms of portraying the wind blowing through the trees? I'm staring at a tree with very, very strong wind blowing right through it.
I tried to think a lot about like the connectedness on the slurs, kind of like what we worked on in like 29 and 30.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like that aspect of it was a little bit better than how I've been practicing it previously.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like overall I could do more to kind of bring that like stylistic change out between like the first section and the second section.
Yeah. And I think another stylistic aspect of this, I mean, I thought it was more connected to the mouthpiece buzzing that you did. You're kind of connecting that to this section. I think you need to be very careful about tempo choice. It's a slow tempo to begin with, but it is slowing down. So really quickly, I know we need to go on to another person, but I would say a great practice strategy for this would be get some sort of a median tempo from several recordings that you listen to, not just one, but choose several. See how each variation changes in tempo, mark a goal tempo, then have your metronome click just the first beat of every bar. That will tell you if you're slowing down within the bar. I mean, you may need to start with every beat and then take like the last beat away and then take the middle beat away and then only click the first beat each bar to sort of keep you true tempo. You will lose a lot of musical energy and the feeling of cycling forward, even in the calm section, if you slow down and come back. So as you work on this now, you're really thinking about connection, you're thinking about articulations, you're thinking about how do all the technical aspects of my playing come together to create a musical product for the listener. And I think that that's your goal, is like, you have to have them connect to you in some way. And I think that you probably need to connect to this piece a little bit more for your audience to be able to do that. I think having a really clear vision of what do I want to say with this will then help any performance you give. You're excited about it, they'll be excited about it. Okay? Great job, Lauren. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for playing today.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Caroline.
I often have my students write out lyrics to the songs that they're playing too. So not just creating a story, but actually like making it a song. And I feel like that helps them a lot too.
Cool. I like that idea. I used to do that with Mozart. Like, I can't remember what it was anymore, the words I made it, but thank you so much for playing today, Lauren. That was great. I hope you got some good ideas to take with you. Thank you for watching. I know I learned so much from hearing my colleagues teach, and I look forward to implementing their ideas into my own teaching and practicing. Thank you again to all who participated. If you will be a high school student next fall, I hope you'll consider auditioning for next year's Roger Collins Award. If you'd like to make a donation towards continuing this award, text Hornfest to 41444. We'll be back in a few minutes with a session by Dr. Rachel Hockenberry on meditation. Thanks so much. See you then. The 2020 Western Horn Festival is offered free to the public. If you would like to make a donation to support students facing unexpected hardship due to COVID-19, text WIU CARE to the number 41444.